What's going on, everybody? Ronan here, and welcome back to the channel. You guys are probably wondering what you're clicking on by the thumbnail and the title of this video. Well, about a year and a half ago, I started a little side project to test to see how my audience would respond to it, called the What If Wheel. While we only got 2 episodes into it, I feel that there was one episode in particular that had a lot of potential because it has a lot to do with one of the original main characters of the anime, Brock. So I decided that since how so many other series are ending on the channel, why don't we continue this one on and breathe new life into it. So this is a re-upload for the original episode. I really hope you guys enjoyed it, and I really hope that we can get this one going so that way we can wrap up this series and get another story onto the channel. But before we get into that, I'm going to need you guys to do the usual thing. Take a look at this analytical stat bar, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and don't forget to drop a comment for the algorithm. But with all that being said, let's get into the very first episode of the What If Wheel, aka What If Brock took the gym challenge. I hope you enjoy. Brock, the rock-solid gym leader of Pewter City. He's one of the most interesting and underutilized traveling companions of Ash Ketchum. When Gen 4 wrapped up, Brock was on his way to becoming a Pokemon doctor, a clear evolution of his goal to be the world's best Pokemon breeder. Then at the end of Gen 5, we see that he's still on his journey as he appeared in a one-off episode with Silent, one of the traveling companions of Ash from the Black and White era. This was very satisfying to see, someone actually completing their goal in the Pokemon anime. Then Gen 7 happened, and all that work they did with Brock was washed away when they reinstated him as the gym leader of Pewter City. This was very disappointing to see. All the work that the writers put in for Brock, gone, reset to 0, and it has remained this way until the current day. So today, we ask a different question. What if Brock took the gym challenge? You all know I like doing videos like this. If you already haven't checked out the other What If I did for Jesse and James when I had them take the gym challenge, I'll link the full story in the iCard above. But let's get back to the question at hand. For us to have Brock take the gym challenge, I think we need to go back, way back, to when Brock was a kid. You see, the reason why Brock wanted to become a breeder is because at a young age, he was forced to take care of his many siblings due to his father abandoning them, and his mother, who had 2 different stories. Originally, she had died, but later was retconned to being completely irresponsible, venturing off on her own whims at times. Which, if I'm being honest, I think the death was way better, because I have a personal bias about parents not taking responsibility for the kids. But we are getting a little too far into my own personal territory here. So, back to the setup. In this world, Flint, Brock's dad, still set out on his journey to challenge the Pokemon League, just like in the original. Although he is a great gym leader, he very quickly finds out that that doesn't mean he's the best trainer out there, taking one loss after another. But he doesn't take this sitting down. Even though he scrubs out of the Indigo League, he does go on to challenge other regions, with moderate success. This is where our story truly begins. Flint finds himself in the Galar region when word of his wife's passing comes to him. Yes, we're going to keep the story of her dying. Kinda dark, but I think it would add more context for the change in Flint's outlook on life. You see, in the original, Flint didn't return because he was ashamed that he couldn't become a successful trainer, so he chose to sell rocks outside of the city. Kind of a weak next step, but whatever. Here we're going to change what Flint's next action is. He actually heads home. Flint had left his wife in charge of the gym, but now that she's gone, the gym needs a leader, and the kids need their father. During Flint's travels back to the Kanto region, he has some time to reflect on his travels and how he could use these experiences in his new life. He knows one thing though, he will set up his kids to be better trainers than he was. Now there's one thing we will need to address for Brock. It's shown in a flashback that Flint gave Brock his Onix as his first Pokemon. For this to work, it means that Onix had to have been given to Brock before Flint left on his journey. In this timeline, we're going to say that Flint never gave Onix to his son, and instead kept it for himself to use on his journey. As Flint realized, Onix could be of a great asset while he was traveling. This will actually impact Brock in a significant way. Now, Brock doesn't have the exposure to the rock-type Pokemon as his mother was a water-type trainer, so he is more familiar with this typing, favoring it more than the rock-type. Next, because Brock didn't actually have his own Pokemon while his father was out on his journey, this means Brock's knowledge isn't as vast as it is in the canon. Don't get me wrong, he still has some, but nowhere near his original counterpart. Basically, Brock is allowed to be just a normal kid. Well, normal for the Pokemon world anyway. Another major change is Brock is far closer to his mother in this version. Borderline a mama's boy, as he didn't have that bonding time with his dad when he was gifted Onix. So Brock's mother passing away suddenly would be a huge shock to the system. This brings us to the point of Flint arriving home to the Pewter Gym. The reunion with his children is bittersweet. While the younger ones are all happy to see their father, Brock on the other hand isn't. Though Brock was the one that contacted his dad about his mother's passing, he never expected Flint to come home. Now, here he is, expecting to be welcomed with open arms in Brock's eyes. This interaction with the two leads Brock to blame Flint for everything, telling him he should have been there, but he wasn't when his mother needed him the most. Brock then runs off, leaving Flint to reflect on what just happened. In this timeline, we're going to set Brock at the age of 8 years old. Just old enough to understand what's going on, but not old enough to understand the true workings of the world as a whole. This will allow Flint to grow as a character, as his oldest is on a tipping point of child to young adult in the Pokemon world, and this is something that he's going to have to navigate carefully. After several hours, Brock finally returns home, and to his surprise, his dad is waiting for him. Not the person he wanted to see, but they both live here now, so Brock is going to have to get used to it. Flint has been waiting patiently, as it's almost midnight. He went through the process of putting all the kids down, which because he has no experience in, took a while. But if there's one thing that all of his travels has taught him, it's how to come back from a loss, and that seems to be all that today was. Flint tells Brock that he looks hungry. He should come inside and he'll make him some food. Brock is hesitant at first, but quickly changes his mind, because the truth is, this is the reason why he came home in the first place. Inside, Flint decides to try and talk to his oldest son. Brock at first is reluctant to listen, until Flint tells Brock that he was right about everything he said. Flint tells Brock that his biggest failure in life was not as a Pokemon trainer, but as a father and a husband. You see, Flint spent a total of 3 years on the road, never really coming home, because it was always easier to travel than to be a parent. Flint tells Brock he knows that it was not the right thing to do, but he can't change what's happened. He can only change how he does things from here on out. This admittance of guilt on Flint's behalf doesn't change Brock's perception of his father, but it does at least make it so that the two can coexist under the same roof, for now at least. So life goes on for some time. The younger kids are more willing to accept their father due to their age, but Brock will always be hesitant. Flint goes on to resume his duties as the pewter gym leader, but Flint and Brock reach another point of conflict when Flint starts to convert the gym back to a rock specialty gym, as his late wife had it changed to a water-based gym after he left. Brock doesn't like this. He sees it as an attempt to erase his mother's memory, prompting another fight between him and Flint. This time though, with a different result. Brock's siblings all take their father's side, surprising Flint and Brock. This triggers something in Brock, and he actually challenges his father to a battle. Flint, not wanting to push his son away any further, agrees to humor him. Flint says Brock can use one of his Pokemon, but Brock refuses. He tells his father that he will use the Pokemon of his mother. You see, Brock doesn't have a high level of knowledge when it comes to battling, but he does know enough to understand that water breeds rock. Flint agrees to this, but Brock makes one more stipulation. If he wins, Flint leaves the gym the same. Flint agrees to these terms, again trying to appease his son. Brock also says that this will be a 3-on-3. Flint again has no problem with this, so he and Brock take their positions on the battlefield. Flint starts the battle with his Onix, the very same one that he gave Brock in canon. Brock, however, isn't fazed by the size of the Goliath Pokemon and overestimates his skill as a trainer, so he sends in Poliwag. This battle is no contest. Brock doesn't understand Poliwag or its battle style, and it loses out of sheer incompetence on Brock's behalf. A little frustrated, Brock recalls it, as Flint looks on, trying to coach his son on his mistakes in that battle, but Brock just ignores it, figuring that Onix only won because of its size. So Brock sends in Blastoise next. As the powerful Jet Turtle emerges from the ball, it gives a look of confusion. It doesn't understand why it's battling Flint, and when Brock gives it a command, it hesitates, until Flint tells Blastoise that it's okay. We are having a practice battle. So Blastoise goes along with it. But again, due to Brock's lack of experience, Blastoise falls to Onix. Brock recalls it, even more frustrated than before, as Flint again attempts to coach his son. However, Brock sees this as Flint antagonizing him, so he thinks he'll show him as he grabs the last ball. Gyarados, I choose you, Brock declares. Flint, in an instant, goes from being confident to being concerned. You see, after he came back, he talked with all of his wife's Pokemon to explain what had happened. While most of them were sad, they accepted it, and Flint promised them that he would find a place for them. All that is, except for Gyarados. It was enraged by the news at its trainer's passing. It was the only human that it trusted, and since all Gyarados wanted to do was rampage, Flint left it inside the ball until he could find a more permanent solution for it, which had been in fact for several months. Now it's free and angry. Brock gives Gyarados a command to use Hydro Pump, confidently thinking that there's no way his dad could beat this Pokemon. But Gyarados has other things in mind. While it does know Brock, its pride as the powerhouse of his mother's team won't let it be ordered around by some kid. And furthermore, it's been locked up for far longer than it's used to. So it's going to do what it knows best, lay waste to the gym and everything in it. Its first target is Brock. Flint sees this and orders Onix to intercept it. This causes a distraction in which Flint yells at Brock that he needs to recall Gyarados now, but Brock is unresponsive. He's frozen in fear as the giant serpents battle it out in front of him. Flint, thinking quick, sends in Rhydon to help Onix. Though the two rock-type Pokemon are at a disadvantage, they do buy Flint enough time to get to Brock and Gyarados' Pokeball to recall it. Flint then asks Brock if he's alright, with no response. He then yells at the boy to snap him back from his shocked state. Flint starts to yell at his son for being so reckless. He expected Brock to be smarter than that, as he was the oldest child. He could have seriously brought harm to himself or his siblings. Brock just breaks out in tears, and then he runs out of the gym. Flint looks on as the gym is now in ruins. It looks like it's going to need a remodel whether anyone likes it or not. After all parties have had some time to cool down, Flint joins Brock in his bedroom. At first, Brock doesn't want to have anything to do with his father, but Flint does something Brock didn't expect. He apologizes. This gets Brock to at least hear Flint out. Flint tells Brock that he's not the one to blame for what happened today. The blame lies solely on Flint. He didn't properly prepare Brock for a Pokemon battle, and as the adult, he shouldn't have let it go so far. It was clear to Flint that Brock and him won't be able to see eye to eye. Flint asked Brock if he would be open to him training his son in the art of Pokemon battle. Brock does pause at this request, but still doesn't trust his father, and declines, saying that he would rather learn from someone else than him. Flint then asks if Brock means those words. The boy cautiously asks why. Flint then responds that he figured Brock wouldn't want to train with him, and he doesn't blame him. But Brock is now 8.5. This means that in less than 2 years, Brock will be able to set out on his own Pokemon journey. Flint tells his son that if there's one thing that he can do right, it's make sure that his son is ready to take that journey by giving him a chance to learn as much about Pokemon as he can. Now curious, Brock asks his father how he plans to do that if he won't even listen to him. Flint tells Brock in his travels he's met a lot of people and made a lot of friends and had a lot of experiences. He then asks Brock one question. Brock, how would you feel about going to school? Brock turns to his dad. What do you mean school? Flint tells Brock that he has learned many lessons in his travels. One of them is to be a great trainer. You need to have a good foundation of knowledge to pull from. The only way to get that is to either 1, live the experiences yourself, which could take years, or 2, you learn about it in a formal setting, like a school. Brock is immediately opposed to this, but Flint tells his son, listen, you don't want to take advice from me, and I don't blame you, but you want to be a good trainer, right? Brock shakes his head acknowledging this. Flint says, well, then I know of a school that your mother attended when she was young. I think you should go there to learn the way she did. Brock replies, I didn't know mom ever went to school. Flint says, yes, and she was the head of her class. As a matter of fact, it was how I met her. Brock says, really? Flint again confirms this. I was there to take my written certification test to be certified as a gym leader. At first, she didn't want to have anything to do with me, claiming that I was a mangy individual and below her for not attending the Pokemon Institute. Brock then asks, well, if mom didn't have any interest in you, then how did you two get married? Flint replies, that's even more of an interesting story. After I left the Pokemon Institute, I came back home to Pewter City to open my gym. Once I passed the battle exam, I was free to run it however I pleased. So when preparing for the battle exam one day, she showed up, your mother. She had chosen to leave the Pokemon Institute and take the gym challenge, and I was her first gym battle. But the only problem was, I wasn't fully certified yet. But when she challenged me, to put her in her place and to get a little revenge, I accepted her challenge, thinking that there was no way this stuck-up girl would best me, a budding gym leader. So you beat mom? Brock asks. No, Flint replies. She wiped the floor with me. There was no contest. Her water types were so well trained, and Gyarados was the star of her team, being her first Pokemon, of course. Then things connect in Brock's head. That's why Gyarados wouldn't listen, not even to dad. I mean Flint, not my dad. What am I thinking? But Brock's inner thoughts are interrupted by the rest of the story. When Flint couldn't give her a badge, Lola, Brock's mom, was very angry with him. She threatened to call the Pokemon certification board to get his gym certification canceled. Flint pleaded with Lola. Eventually, out of pity or understanding, Lola relented her threat. She even offered to stay and help Flint train for a certification battle, with the stipulation that she would be his first battle once certified. And the rest you say is history. Flint got certified, he and Lola fell in love, and Brock was born shortly after. With all this new information, Brock then asks the one big question, but he is hesitant. Flint can see that there's something bothering his son, so he attempts to pry it out of him. At first, Brock won't say anything, but after much insistence on Flint's behalf, Brock blurts out, if you were so in love with mom, then why did you leave? Flint juts back. He knew this question would come up eventually. He tells Brock, that's not something that's easy to talk about, but I think it's something you're old enough to understand. Flint then explains, as his family grew, it became harder to support them on a gym leader's salary, especially when everyone you aim to battle not only wants to take your badge, but your money. The decision was then made that one of us would go on the road to challenge the Pokemon League to help support the family. The only question was who. Ultimately, Flint was the one, as Lola had just given birth to their final child, Brock's youngest sibling. This was only supposed to be temporary, but they always needed more and more money, and Flint found it easier to battle than to raise kids, so he did what he did best. He stayed away. Though Brock still doesn't trust his father, he at least understands the situation. Brock then says, well, if money's so tight, then why would you want me to go to school? We can't afford it. Flint says, well, about that. You see, during my travels, I found many rare items, and they are very valuable. I've been selling them since I've been back to pay for the remodel of the gym. But after Gyarados' rampage, I kinda like the way it is. So that means all the money I've made can be used to send you to the Pokemon Institute. Brock is still reluctant to leave his siblings, and Flint knows this. He tells his son that he doesn't have to decide now. Take some time and think about it. And that's just what Brock does. Now, for whatever reason, he's seeing things in a different light. He notices that his dad is actually really good with the other kids. Brock starts entertaining the idea that leaving them may not be such a bad idea. After 2 weeks, Flint had all but forgot about the the conversation with his oldest son, but Brock hadn't. He approaches Flint, actually calling him dad for the first time since Flint had been back, asking if the offer to attend the Pokemon Institute was still open. Flint looks at his son with a smile. Of course it is, he says. Brock then asks what he has to do to get in. Flint says, well, you're going to need a Pokemon to start off with. Brock says, well, then he'll just take one of Mom's, as they really aren't doing much anymore. Flint tells Brock, while that would be a good idea normally, part of the first year entry is that you have a new Pokemon, one that hasn't had a lot of training. Brock says, great. Well, then what will I do? I don't have any new Pokemon like that. Flint replies, well, you do have a few options. One is to get assigned to Pokemon at the Institute. This piques Brock's interest. Flint tells him that there is a downside though. If Brock doesn't complete the whole 4 years at the Institute, then they will revoke his gifted Pokemon, and then he'll be back to square one. Brock thinks great. He wanted to go to the Institute like his mother, and then challenge the gyms like her as well. He only had to wait a year and a half until he could get his Pokemon trainer's license after all. Brock then asks what the second option is. Flint says, well, you could get a sponsorship and use one of the Pokemon like Professor Oak gives out. Then you will never have to give that Pokemon back. It'll be yours for life. Brock likes this idea, but there's only one problem. Professor Oak lives in Pallet Town, and they are in Pewter City. It's not exactly right across the street. Brock asks his dad to go, but unfortunately, with Brock's siblings and the gym, Flint doesn't have the time to take Brock at the moment. Not until he gets the rest of his life under control. Disappointed, Brock concedes in defeat, but Flint makes a suggestion to Brock. Son, I know you may not like this idea, but what if I sponsored you? Brock asks, can he do that? Flint replies, as the gym leader of Pewter City, he could give his official endorsement to anyone he sees fit, and the Pokemon Institute will accept it, no questions asked. Brock doesn't like the idea of being sponsored by his dad, but if it'll get him out of the gym and into the school, he's game. Brock accepts, thinking that Flint will have some cool water Pokemon for him, as that's the typing he's most familiar with. Flint then tells Brock that he doesn't have any water types that meet the qualifications for the Pokemon Institute, but he does have one that will. The only catch is, it's not a type that Brock is fond of, the rock type. Brock hangs his head, saying that it is what it is. Flint, honoring his son's request, declares, Roly-Coly, I choose you. Out pops an odd-looking Pokemon that is completely foreign to Brock. Even though he doesn't like the rock typing, he's at least familiar with it from all the Pokemon that his father has. Flint explains that Roly-Coly is a Pokemon that is caught in the Galar region. Flint was preparing to take the gym challenge there when he got the call that Lola had passed. Flint tells Brock that he's done no training with this Pokemon whatsoever, so it's a bit temperamental and a bit hot-headed, kinda like Brock. Roly-Coly has also been in its Pokeball since it was caught, so it won't be an easy Pokemon to train. Brock stares intensely at the odd-looking rock Pokemon as it stares intensely back at him. Do you want it, Brock? Flint asks. Brock shakes his head in agreement, stubbornly thinking that this Pokemon won't get the best of him as he accepts the challenge, readying himself for the road that lay ahead. And that's all we had for today's video. I really appreciate you guys stopping by to watch all the way to the end, and I just wanted to say thank you for that. If you guys really enjoy my content, consider following me on some of my other platforms like Discord, where you can get to know other people who are interested in what ifs, or on Twitter, where I post sometimes behind the scenes updates. Or if you want to help the channel grow a little bit extra, why don't you consider donating like the people right here have, as whatever you could offer could help us get to a larger audience by helping us get new videos done, or some of the projects that or custom art is getting kind of expensive. So we want to make sure that we have the funds to do that. But with all that being said, I really hope you guys enjoyed everything, and I will see you in the next video.